The moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. Let's talk about the real problem with Miles Morales' Secret Wars and inconsistency, all right? Mail says, hi Perch, I'm sorry to hear your channel is winding down. Your show has been really informative and fun over the years, at least for me. I hope we can get more videos with Joe. Those are always awesome. Yeah, looking forward to doing some more videos with Joe before everything winds down for sure. I've been meaning to share my opinion, my opinion about Miles Morales with you. I know this is not about his name or the villains. Personally, I think that 2015 Secret Wars really ruined Miles in the comics. On one second, Miles' mom and uncle are dead, and he's hanging out with the new Ultimates. And then suddenly he's in a different universe, his friends are dead, and forgotten. His mom and uncle are inexplicably alive because he had a rotten burger up his ass and gave it to the Molecule Man. How embarrassing. That was a weird bit, that he was just carrying a hamburger around in his costume. Like, it's a skin-tight costume. Like, are you packing that thing in your junk to make yourself look bigger when you run into Miss Marvel? Like, why are you holding a burger down there? That really doesn't make a lot of sense. I understand it's comics and everything else, but hell, like the idea that like this guy's pulling a burger out. He'd had that burger there for a while, and where did he get this burger? Like, did somebody make a burger in the Thor Tavern and then it was wrapped up in styrofoam and they put it down his pants? Like, there's a lot of questions here if you think through it. That was one of the weirder moments. And it was also, Hickman does a good job with kind of grand, big universes. And that one felt like a gag to me. And given that he spent so long in his Avengers run and his Fantastic Four run leading up to this, like this was a long, long plan, putting it all together for Marvel. And to have this kind of bit moment at the end of like, here's a burger. It was weird. It did feel a little bit like a lot of the MCU films where they undercut their own seriousness. And in this case, though, they had it. You know, Hickman had established the seriousness of the situation. He actually makes something pretty cool. And anyway, there you go. All right. While Marvel has pretty much decided that Miles will remember as the Ultimate Universe, I think there are a lot of underlying problems with this decision. Yeah, Miles could remember his history and make the first 4 years of comics still matter, but we never saw how he reacted to his universe being destroyed or how joining the 616 affected him. Many of his friends died in the old universe, and he never seemed to care. And considering his mom came back, how could Miles know if this was a real mom or just was resurrected or just a copy created by the Molecule Man? Does she remember dying? Is that the case for his dad and friends? Do they remember Secret Wars? Did the Molecule Man create them too? If not, how do any of them fit in this new universe anyway? How is his mom a nurse or dad a cop ex-agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. if they're from a different universe and don't have the right credentials or connections? Seriously, who wants to start reading about a superhero whose story dramatically changes and is so complicated after just 4 years of comics? And therein lies, by the way, the kind of the problem with Secret Wars and a lot of what they did is Secret Wars did a good job of cleaning up a lot of things. Honestly, I think it very effectively did a lot of that. And then it seemed to undercut or rip away a lot of what it established and learned. In general, I think a bit of a weird decision, a lot of what they did with Secret Wars, but we'll continue with mail. For me, I wish Marvel properly integrated Miles and his history in the 616 universe instead of just plopping him into it. Make a new version of Miles and try to retcon or merge his old stories into the main 616 universe. Yeah, most of his Ultimate stories don't fit the 616 exactly, but is arguably better than what we have and would be a solid foundation for Miles to work off of. I know you don't like Nick Fury Jr., and I'm going to assume you'll disagree with me, but I prefer that kind of retconning instead of just adding somebody who doesn't fit into the established continuity. And no, I agree with you. I agree. It's wacky. It does not work well. For example, I would explain that his mom got injured and fell into a coma during Miles' fight with one of Marvel's mini symbiotes instead of actually dying. This is how we can have Miles stop being Spider-Man for a while and have the emotional growth with his dad like we saw in the original series. For Miles' origin, I would try and use him or try and tie him into a story as close as possible to the original death of the Ultimate Peter Parker, such as Spider-Man or the other Superior Spider-Man. Hell, with X-Men Legends and Peter David's recent Marvel work, you could just retcon a story in Peter's past where he is believed to have died in a battle against Green Goblin, and Miles has his first adventures before Peter eventually recovers and comes back. The biggest difference would be that no one would know Peter's identity, but I'd argue this option is way better than what we have anyway. I'd argue that the problem doesn't just affect Miles in the comics, but also other media too. His movie's version has a completely different origin and story for Miles in the game. The game never has Peter die for Miles to take over, which makes him only a completely different character and takes a lot of the interesting and power aspects away from Miles. The same could probably be said about his countless TV adaptations. When they introduce Miles into the MCU, what origin do they go with? Is he going to be someone who took over for Spider-Man after he died, or some other kid who got bit by Spider-Man and wanted to be a spider and wanted to be a Spider-Man? The death of Peter is a fundamental part of Miles' origin and story. It's like Peter losing his uncle or Superman coming from a doomed planet. There needs to be a solid foundation that fits Miles into the narrative of this universe, and because of Secret Wars, Miles no longer has one. There's something wrong about a character who doesn't have a definitive origin that doesn't fit the world they're in. Thanks again for a great show. Thank you for a long mail, a good mail. This is a kind of fun comic stuff you have in shops and other things. So look, I think in general, I said Secret Wars screwed a lot of things up. I mean, the other problem with Secret Wars is that it certainly felt like Hickman was moving to a definitive end of a lot of things in the universe. And then it's not just Miles. They kind of retconned in stuff with, certainly the Ultimate Mr. Fantastic. That one wasn't as bad. They threw stuff in regarding where Guardians of the Galaxy were at that didn't make a lot of sense. The Avengers certainly were in a weird state. The Hulk was in a weird state. Like, they had the whole thing with Captain America and his son. And that just went sideways for a while. I mean, there was like a bunch of stuff in there, let alone what it did to characters like Miss Marvel and Jane Foster Thor, which was running at the time, and a lot of other characters where it just it blew up a lot of the story of what was happening. And that was a pretty reasonably big problem. I agree with you. I mean, I don't think it's the biggest thing in the world if Miles doesn't have the death of Peter Parker. I think you can work around it, but you need to work around it thoughtfully. Maybe the way you mentioned it, like Peter was suspected dead. Maybe like what they did with Peter Parker and Bryn Riley just recently, where there was a different version, Peter got injured, and so he had to bring in Ben. I mean, there's a lot of ways where you could make this work, but the fact that it's like, we're just going to mush you into this universe. And then now with, Hickman basically coming into saying, why don't you're recreating that moment in order to create the new Ultimate Universe. I think it's, I don't know. It's not going to have the same success as the original because it's this weird copy of a copy kind of mentality they have. And I think, and many of you may disagree with this, I think Miles is inherently a decent character. As I said before, I think the Spider-Man name is a problem for him, and I think it's meaningless. I still think, and I've heard very passionate arguments for and arguments against. I think the right answer for Miles, if you truly want him to be his own identity, is have him drop the Spider-Man and say, I'm Miles. Go public with a secret identity and just say, I'm Miles. This is who I am. This is kind of new type of hero. It would play well. It'd be an interesting kind of baller move. It would set up a lot of interesting stories. Granted, you couldn't go back from it. And this is a problem with a lot of mainstream comics is they want to tell a bold story, but also simultaneously leave the door open in case they ever want to undo the story they've done. So there's a bunch of issues in all this. But I think that the handling of Miles Morales in the Marvel Universe does leave a lot to be desired. I think it is confusing. I think the best case that Marvel winds up hoping for throughout all this is that people will just kind of forget that any of this stuff happened. And that's really what they're shooting for right now. It's, hey, Miles never existed in the Ultimate Universe because we just don't talk about that anymore. That's kind of one of the surprising bits that they're going back to now with, Hickman resurrecting the Ultimate Universe is they're reminding people of this weird convoluted way that they got here. And so, there's some aspects to this that are kind of funky, but all right, I guess, what are we going to do? So look, I mean, it's a long-winded way of saying, I agree with you. I think there are ways to solve it. I think that the best way to solve it is just kind of be, when you're making these moves of bringing people in from the multiverse and doing all that stuff, you have to have a thoughtful way that you're introducing these people and what you're going to keep and what you're not. And I think comic books have a problem right now where the multiverse stuff is just, it feels like shorthand for, fuck it, we're not going to think about it very much, and here we go. That's how a lot of the multiverse stuff comes across. And as I mentioned, I think that has a hugely detrimental effect on the comics, because it's basically teaching people to care less about the big moments, care less about when heroes die or they have that kind of sacrifice or journey. It doesn't really matter because the multiverse is here and yeah, it'll be fine. That's the message that gets sent. And I think that can only be bad over time for comics. There's no benefit to getting your audience to believe that, things don't matter. That's, that absolutely will lead to lower sales. And I think Miles, I look at it this way, Miles has struggled as a comic, and it really shouldn't have. It's had, now 2 hit movies, a lot of attention. You got the normies interested in, Spider-Verse and all that kind of stuff. So you have people who are becoming invested in this entire thing, and you're almost kind of shooing them away. So it's quite bizarre what people have wound up doing. As this, I mean, Miles should be selling like gangbusters. It's not. And a big part of it is it's very hard to understand what the fuck the comic is all about, where it comes from, this convoluted history. And quite frankly, if you watch the movies, either of them, and you see the kind of action and stuff Miles gets into, that's fun. That's what people will show up to the theater to watch and to buy. You open up the comic and you've got like Saladin Ahmed, looking at kind of racism in the classroom, and it's like that is not what people saw in the movie theater. It's just, you need to give Miles some just solid adventures where he can go and and do something there, as opposed to whatever the hell they're trying to do now, which they haven't built up the platform of him just going out and saving the day, fighting supervillains. It just doesn't work. It's what's kind of baffling about this, and we'll end it here, is that Spider-Man has like a pretty robust, rich, deep rogues gallery. There's a lot of villains you can use here in his own camp, in his own spider camp. Yet they continuously want to go to something like, I don't know, let's drag out the Prowler again. It's his uncle, and I don't know, is his uncle up to shenanigans or not? I'm not sure, but here's some other new villains. And not to be that guy, but a lot of the villains they create for him to fight are black or are like weird, nondescript white supremacist types. So he's either fighting kind of a mob of, racist losers, or there's these new villains they've created who are black, who are, it just, when you read the comic, it feels like, it's like, well, we have black superheroes, we're going to have them fight black villains. That's what we have to do, because that's how the stories must be done. And instead you're like, have him do a 4-issue arc with the Scorpion, or Electro, or even Girl Electro, or the Rhino, or Kraven the Hunter, or we can go on and on and on. Yes, they're doing something right now where he's fighting Carnage, but the problem there is that you got a half dozen symbiote-based Vomit comics every month going out on the stand, so that doesn't feel special. Where is the Kraven's Last Hunt storyline for Miles Morales? Why can't he go up against Doc Ock for a little while? Like, give him some iconic villains to fight and beat, and quite frankly, that will do more for the character to get him over and generate some popularity than almost anything else you can do. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Maybe I'm full of crap. That's fine too. And thanks